I am someone who speaks and acts out of a space of love, which is why I am confident in using my voice to communicate my feelings and boundaries in a way that honors myself and the beings I communicate with. More and more, this is the reflection of the reality I am experiencing, of the person that I choose to be. This, of course, means that I wasn't always like this. Welcome or welcome back. I already poured us some tea. This is your cup in case you didn't bring your own. You can drink whatever you want. Hello. And this is my cup. And I thought since Mariah Carey already broke out of her ice block, 'tis time, 'tis the season, indeed, to talk about boundaries. For me, growing up, Christmas came with a lot of joy and also with a lot of swept under the rug situations and circumstances that I'm only now really aware of and capable of processing. At our annual family get-togethers, I remember many instances where I was made to hug relatives I didn't want to hug, or comments made about my changing body as a teenager by an older relative that were completely inappropriate and just hurtful. Of course, having one's boundaries disrespected is not only a holiday-bound issue. I can only speak from my own experience, of course, and me growing up and being socialized as a girl and then as a young woman, as an AFAB individual. In a lot of cases, you learn very early on to accommodate the people around you, to make yourself as small as possible, to keep quiet, to do as you're told. And so naturally, or unnaturally really, because there's nothing natural about being raised like this, as normal as my experiences may be, I became a people pleaser. I do everything in my power to try and keep the peace, to meet the emotional needs of my caretakers, to be nice. This history of self-abandonment throughout my childhood and adolescence is what's kept me safe in an emotionally unsafe and unpredictable home. But these circumstances have led an actually helpless child who was punished for speaking up, whose no wasn't being taken seriously, and whose emotions and experiences were consistently invalidated, to grow up to become a teenager and then a young adult who believed they were entirely helpless and incapable of changing or controlling the course of negative events, such as the violations of their own boundaries. So I couldn't do everything in my power to speak up when I was being mistreated, to make sure my boundaries were upheld and respected, because I was never given the safe environment and the tools to develop a sense of self-trust and agency and power. So what can we do to start reclaiming that power now? Tea break. My first suggestion would be to let go of hope. Let me clarify. You are allowed to let go of the hope that other people will change. For me, holding on to the idea or this hope that I would get an apology, that my mistreatment would be acknowledged, that the people around me would change, all of that is yet another way in which I gave away my power, because it would be up to them, to other people, to try and save me from my misery, to validate my experience. So I needed to hear that I was allowed to let go. And when I did hear that from my therapist, there wasn't like a big immediate outburst of tears. It was just kind of a heavy, quiet relief. Only now, over the course of the last few months, and now in the process of making this video and the dread of the holidays coming up, is when all this anger and this grief is kind of bubbling to the surface, asking to be felt and moved through. And so this is an opportunity for me to now validate my own experience. This letting go of the hope that another person will change might be the most impactful decision you'll make. At least it was for me. So in case you need that permission the way that I needed it, you're allowed to let go of the hope that the other person will change. You're allowed to let that go. And another important therapy insight, you can best predict another person's future behavior by their past behavior. So of course, if you were mistreated by a person, especially if consistently in the past, there is an extremely high chance that that will continue. You cannot change them. But I can change. And you can change too. Great, I hear you say. I don't believe you. And believe me, I didn't believe it either. At first, it will just continue to feel hopeless. In the beginning, all you can do is change your own behavior, the way you react to certain people and situations, even if you don't believe that it's going to do anything, especially if you don't believe that it's going to change anything. And it starts with assessing how we normally react so that we can be aware of our patterns and change something. For example, I wouldn't speak up when I was being mistreated or when people made passive-aggressive comments, blame me for things that I didn't do. I would just kind of get quiet, let them speak, and when they were done, I would go to my room and I would continue to treat myself the same way that I was treated by others. The emotional abuse wouldn't stop when I left the situation. I would blame myself, I would think and say unkind things about myself, and over the years, this way of coping led to self-harm and life-ending thoughts. So knowing roughly that this was how those situations would usually play out, I needed and wanted to change it. What I needed to start doing was voicing my discomfort, thinking of boundaries, express those, and in case these boundaries were not respected, I needed to think of consequences. I thought of a couple examples and of how to communicate feelings, boundaries, consequences. When you raise your voice, I get scared because I think back to when I was a child and was scared of getting hurt. I need to know that we're all safe here. Would you be willing to lower your voice? If not, I will remove myself from the situation. I feel angry that you touched me when I said that I didn't want to be touched because I need my boundaries to be respected. Would you be willing to ask for my consent to touch me? If you aren't, I will no longer feel safe around you and will try to avoid being in the same room alone with you as much as possible. I would be sad if I needed to do this because I am wanting to have a relationship with you where we both feel safe and respected, but I would have to do this to make sure that I am safe. So these are just a few examples of issues that you may experience and how you may communicate them. Also, I tricked you in case you recognize this little setup. No, we are not in the book Nook for no reason because this approach to how to communicate is based on this book, Nonviolent Communication by Marshall B. Rosenberg. Highly recommend this read. Oh no, I hurt my book. Damage control. Please think of and find kind ways of treating yourself if you've been in similar situations to this beforehand. So for example, I know that I like making tea and drinking it. This is not like a huge, mind-blowing, life-changing thing to do. It's just, I like tea, it's warm, it doesn't make me feel horrible. Anything that is neutral/positive leaning will do the thing to just get through the aftermath of it. Another thing that I did not expect to work as well, but definitely does, is to listen to uplifting music. Listening to really sad, melancholy type music can also just make me spiral and feel worse. So what I do, begrudgingly most of the time, is to either make myself dance very sillily. I will dance to just any upbeat song. My personal pick would be this. Or if I'm too much in my feelings to dance, I will listen to any one of these. They just work for me. Don't know if they'll work for you. Maybe try it out. Another thing you could try and do is reach out to friends, reach out to family members that you feel safe with, and possibly, if nobody's available, call a helpline. Or something that I started doing is sending voice memos to myself, just so that all the things that may be happening inside my brain get out. That it's not all up in here, but actually out of my mouth. And that usually helps relieve a lot of the stress that I'm feeling. Of course, let yourself cry if you need to. All that is loving and kind is encouraged and allowed. Let's say you went through a situation where you had to express your feelings, set a boundary, and you may be here listening to this and thinking, great, I did the thing, and now I'm here with a cup of coffee, tea, beverage of my choice, and I have chill music on in the background and I still feel horrible. What do I do now? And my answer, thank you for asking, would be do it again. That is all you can do to keep showing up for yourself. It's strenuous and tiring, I know. But this is work. Healing is work. You're probably undoing years of programming. This will take time. After you've found yourself in one of those situations where you've had to set a boundary, you may feel awful. You may feel like a villain, especially if you're a people pleaser. You're not a villain. You're not evil. You're not naughty. You expressing your feelings and needs and boundaries shows that you're actively trying to make this relationship or situation work. Make it work for you. This is kind not only to you, but also to everyone involved. On the other hand, there's nothing kind about growing resentful towards somebody for overstepping a boundary that may never have been expressed. That is harmful to you and the relationship, situation, person in question. Plot twist, but maybe you have an evil twin. So just recently, I was in a situation where I myself expressed a boundary to a person. That person respected it. We moved on. But then, not shortly after, I myself crossed that same exact boundary. The other person didn't. I did. So I was confused. I felt awful, disappointed, frustrated. And so when those layers of secondary emotions like frustration, disappointment start to layer themselves on top of what I was initially feeling, which was just confusion and discomfort, I asked myself genuinely, what happened? Or more specifically, I thought of two other questions. The first one was what need wanted to be met that seemed more important than the benefits I would get from upholding and respecting my own boundary. An example for that might be maybe you felt lonely and you texted an ex even though you told yourself you wouldn't anymore. Perhaps you were needing emotional connection. And then the second question was, how can I get that need met in a way that is more loving, more kind? If we're going with the same example, that might be, okay, I'm noticing that I'm feeling lonely and that I'm wanting to feel emotionally connected to somebody. Instead of reaching out to that ex, I am going to talk to a friend, talk to a family member, or maybe I would start pouring into myself. How can I spend my time in a way that helps me feel loved? What do I like to do? And again, an important thing to remember is that even the part of you that overstepped your own boundary isn't evil. Even that part isn't a villain, because in the end, they are just trying to get a need that is unmet met. If I want to make sure that this doesn't happen again, all I need to do is make sure that the evil twin version of me and the me are both getting their needs met in a way that it feels like a win-win, so that both people are happy. And then nobody's getting their back stabbed. While I am getting more and more consistent and showing up for myself in loving and respectful ways, I am obviously far from perfect, and I am obviously having expectations of perfection about my own healing. But healing is work. It's consistent, strenuous effort over a long period of time, and as much as those patterns of self-neglect are still pulling at me, I am actively focusing my energy on change. And I have already noticed a lot of it. I can trust myself to speak up now when I don't like something. I can trust myself to know what feels right for me. Yeah, there is that kindling of self-trust, of agency, of integrity, of power. I am sending you so much love. You got this. I'm proud of you. See you soon.